a distinguished American politician who has led the way as both the mayor of Baltimore and the 61st governor of Maryland. He has done some remarkable things in K-12 education, clean energy, and fiscal responsibility. He led Maryland in a very difficult financial time. My personal observation, he's a really smart dude and leads the way as a distinguished example. I remember following Al Gore when An Inconvenient Truth came out in the 90s, all the way to the current Paris climate peace talks. And Governor O'Malley has a plan to go 100% off the grid of clean energy by 2050. That is leading the example. That is paving the way. So please join us in welcoming Governor Martin O'Malley.
Jen, this one? Okay. Michael, thanks very, very much, and thank you all. It's awesome to be with you. And Michael, thank you for your very generous introduction. But let's be honest with one another. If I were that smart, I wouldn't be running for president. It's great to be with all of you. And I want to thank Ken Pepper and everybody with the Economic Club of Las Vegas for taking the time to come out here this morning. And we had a terrific night last night, except for the horns. The horns were a little loud in the room last night. But we had a great night at the Battlehorn Battleground. And all of you here in Nevada play a huge role in crafting this presidential race right out of the gates. Oh my God. Of course, the first state is Iowa. I have been spending a lot of time in Iowa, as you might imagine. The latest polling out there had us up to 10%. Right before Christmas. My wife said to me before Christmas, true story, "Oh, what would you want for Christmas?" I said, "I'd like 2 more points on a public poll." So that 10 points is higher than John Kerry, higher than Jimmy Carter, higher than Gary Hart, higher than many, many people who have run for president from the position I am, which is a virtual unknown in the nation. But once the voters have an opportunity to have their voices heard, a person can become very, very famous in our country overnight. And as soon as we come out of Iowa, my friends, I will be back here in Nevada. And I hope that we have opportunity to reconnect. I need you. I need your help. I believe that this is not an ordinary campaign year. There is a lot of volatility in the air, and there's a lot of anxiety in the air of our nation. Sinking sense that our politics has become so divided that it's hard to imagine that we can ever come together again to accomplish important things for our nation. But I'm here to tell you that however discouraged you might get about our national politics, I encourage you to do as I do and talk to young people under 30. Because you'll rarely find among them people that deny that climate change is real or think their government shouldn't do something about it. You'll rarely find young people under 30 that want to bash new American immigrants or slam America's door in the face of Syrian refugee families. Nor will you very often find young Americans under 30 that want to deny rights to gay couples or to their children. So all of this tells me we're actually moving to a much more compassionate, much more connected, a much more generous place. There's nothing so wrong with our politics that it can't be healed with new leadership and the love we have for one another. In other words, we're all in this together, and we need to move forward together. So let me share a little bit with you. What I thought I'd do is share with you a little bit about my story, and then just kind of do a broad brush, share some thoughts with you about our economy, because nothing works very well unless people are working, right? Unless people are getting ahead. And then we'll open it up to question and answer. And by golly, if you have answers, I hope you raise your hand first. Because I am on a search for answers. I also want to thank John Oseguera for being here, former speaker. John, thank you, my fellow Irishman, John Oseguera. So let's begin, shall we? True story. Shortly, I am the only candidate in this race, this 3-person race, whose background is fundamentally that of an executive, getting things done, bringing people together, balancing a budget every year. And While it's fine to be a voice for change in Congress, while it's fine to be a cabinet secretary, I have been a mayor and I have been a governor, which means I've had to assemble cabinets. I've had to pull together the votes to get difficult things done. When I first, I served on the Baltimore City Council from 1991 to 99. I was getting ready to get out of politics altogether when no one in that very, very violent and tumultuous year for our city chose to step up, who could turn us around. I told my wife, you have to let me try, because I can't live with myself if I don't try. Hundreds of people will die if we don't try. So my wife let me try. And then I served for 2 terms on the Baltimore City, as mayor of Baltimore. When I was elected, we were the most violent, abandoned, and addicted city in America, and we put ourselves on a path for the biggest 10-year crime reduction of any city in America. Greatly increased drug treatment, greatly increased how we police our police and improve police and community relations. Wasn't able to make her immune from setbacks, as this year's events have shown. But we were able to make a lot of progress over some pretty deep and substantial divides. In 2006, I ran for governor against incumbent Republican governor and defeated him. He was the only incumbent Republican governor defeated that year. And I served then for 2 terms as governor of Maryland. And true story, when my wife and I moved with our kids into the governor's mansion in 2007, I was taking my young son with his new friends to soccer practice, just like any other dad would, except that the man driving the car to my left had a badge and a gun because of the executive protection. So this little boy, Billy McCormick, in the back seat, says to me, Mr. O'Malley, what do you do? I said, well, Bill, I'm the governor of Maryland. And he said, yeah, but what do you do? And I said, well, Bill, your parents vote, your parents pay taxes, and they send representatives to Annapolis, and we make the decisions together, and my job is to pull people together to make the decisions that make our schools better, to keep our police officers on the street, that improve the health of the waters of the Chesapeake Bay. So these are all of the things that I do as governor. He said, yeah, but for work, like what do you do? So my job has been as an executive. Lots of us, the 3 of us all have progressive values in our party, but I'm the only one that can point to 15 years of executive experience actually getting those things done. First state in the nation to pass a living wage, raising the minimum wage, in modernizing our transportation revenues and infrastructure so that we can make modern investments that make our economy go. When the recession hit, rather than trying to cut our way to prosperity, we actually invested more in infrastructure, including water and wastewater infrastructure. We invested more in education, made our public schools the best public schools in America 5 years in a row. We never did that in easier times. And we were the only state to go 4 years in a row without a penny's increase to college tuition. We practiced, in other words, not only the politics of inclusion, but the economics of inclusion. We made it easier for people to vote rather than harder. We made it easier for people to join labor unions and bargain collectively for better wages. We extended prevailing wage to more projects, including our school construction projects, which we virtually doubled our investment in that. We passed marriage equality. We passed the DREAM Act. We passed driver's licenses for new American immigrants so people could get to and from work and take care of their families. All of these things were actions and not words. And the result of those actions of inclusion, of fuller participation for all of our people in the economic, social, and political life of our country were these. We defended all through the recession the highest median income in America and the second highest median income for African American families. During that recession, we also raised to the highest percentage of any state in the union our minority and women participation goals, and we exceeded them in the recession. We expanded tax credits for research and development, created new loan programs for small businesses, including a loan guarantee program that some have also emulated. We streamlined, revised, and repealed more than 130 business regulations, made it easier for people to register businesses online. Identifying that a weakness in our innovation economy was venture capital, we created an Invest Maryland fund with more than $80 million to invest in startups and seeding those new innovations. We launched sector-driven initiatives for workforce development in cyber and biotech and advanced manufacturing. And as a result, we created a faster rate of job creation coming out of the recession than our neighbors in Virginia or Pennsylvania, who were both trying to cut their way to recovery. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which hardly ever says nice things about Democratic governors in any state. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce named my state, for my last 3 years in service, the #1 state in America for innovation and entrepreneurship 3 years in a row. So in doing the right thing, the fair thing, the inclusive thing, is also good for business. So what does any of that have to do with the challenge you have before you and the responsibility you have to pick a new president moving forward? There are two phrases I've heard all across the country, and some of you I had the honor to meet before I walked off the diving board to make this offering. But there are two phrases I've heard everywhere I go, and they are the phrases new leadership and getting things done. We cannot be this dissatisfied with how our economy is working, how our national politics is not, and think that a resort to failed ideologies or old names is going to move us forward. That's not the way our country works. When we face times of stalemate, we look for new leadership. And I believe that's what's happening in America today. Our country has come a long way since 2008. We have now had, I'm going to rattle off 370 numbers. I don't know why, but as we gather today, they all kind of line up. Our country's come a long way since 2008. We have now, since that Wall Street crash that wiped out millions of jobs, and I know you guys were hard hit here, we were very hard hit in Maryland. I stood with my neighbors in line at the counseling centers that we set up, trying to help people save their homes after they had lost their job. Miserable and difficult time for us as a country. But we've now created 70 months in a row of positive month-over-month job growth. That's the first time that's happened in a long, long time. We're the only species on the planet without full employment, so jobs are important. And that's the good news. 70 months in a row of positive job growth. The difficult news is this. 70% of us are today earning the same or less than we were 12 years ago. And that's not the way our country is supposed to work. That's not the way our economy is supposed to work. That's not how the American dream is supposed to work. So there's urgent work to be done. Third 70. When 70% of your economic growth comes from consumer demand, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that with wages flatlining or declining for 70% of us, there's not enough demand. There's not enough economic growth. So what do we do about it? The growing economic injustice, the widening opportunity gap in our country, and indeed the widening justice gap between equal protection under the law, that promise, all of these widening injustices, they will not solve themselves. We have to solve them. And the good news is that we are Americans. We make our own future. We shape our own destiny. And we do it by the choices we make. John Kennedy said that to govern is to choose. I said that progress is a choice. Job creation is a choice. Whether we give our children a future with more opportunity or less, all of these things are choices. And they depend upon our ability to take actions together. Actions to make wages go up for all Americans. Actions to invest again in our own country's job generating and opportunity expanding potential. And actions to square our shoulders to the great challenges of our times.